Good morning. We are going to look at the baptismal review worksheet that you worked on. We're going to look at the first question. What is faith? I put a number of things here that faith is. Faith is hope for what is to be, but what we have not seen. It is a knowledge of Jesus' death and resurrection and how that gives me life and salvation. It is trusting God above all things, as we say in the commandments. D, it's an active influence and power that causes us to produce good fruits of Christian love. So our faith is a living thing which affects our lives so that we do the things that please God, that show love to God and our neighbor. And then I had you look at 1 Corinthians 3 and Galatians 2, because the definition of faith ultimately, the one which I mentioned in class as extranos or external to us, is that faith is the Holy Spirit living in us, making of us a temple of God, making of us a new person, a new creation in Jesus Christ. So what is faith? Faith is God living in us, transforming us so that we live out that faith in the world. So it includes all the things above: hope, knowledge, trust, activity. It includes a desire to be with God, a love of God, but it is essentially something which comes from God and is given to us. It is the Holy Spirit, not just a thing, but an active person acting to make us God's children. So for your answer, what is faith? Faith is the Holy Spirit dwelling in us. Number 2, what is baptism? And again, I put a point above. Baptism means to wash with water. So what is baptism? Luther says it is a washing of regeneration and a renewing of by the Holy Spirit. So baptism is a sacrament where God gives his Holy Spirit, in other words, he gives faith, and makes us his children. A sacrament being something which gives the forgiveness of sins, was created by God, and has a physical means. So baptism has the physical means of water and the Word. The water and the Word are attached together, and through the water and the Word, through faith, God creates faith in the child or in the adult. Okay? So what is baptism? It is when God puts his name on someone. I've said a lot of things that baptism is. You might write on your line, baptism is God giving faith by water and the Word. Number 3, who should be baptized? Everyone. Anyone who wishes to be baptized should be baptized. Babies should be baptized. Those who believe in Jesus should be baptized. So go ye therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them. So all nations. And we say, in sin my mother conceived me. So babies too, because they need to be baptized. Basically, anyone who might die needs to be baptized. Now, we don't baptize those who say they don't want to be baptized, or those who are in a household where they say we're not getting them baptized. But we baptize anyone who comes to us and says they want to be baptized, or is of a household where they say, let's baptize them. Because in baptism, God gives forgiveness and makes them the family. So number 4, who can baptize? You can. Any Christian. We baptize in the triune God. So if you believe in the triune God, if you have faith in the triune God, if you yourself are baptized, you can baptize. Now, if you're like a little kid playing around at baptism, that's not a valid baptism. If you're not a Christian, that wouldn't be a valid baptism. But if you're a Christian, you can baptize. Having said that, because the public office of the ministry has been given to me and those who are ordained, we are the ones who do the baptism in public for God, because we do the things of God in public. So in a non-emergency situation, a pastor baptizes. But any Christian can baptize. All right, question 5. Is the water of baptism different from normal water? The answer is no. It's not electric water. It's not holy water. It's water. But the water does this special thing because God is active through the water. Word and water are brought together. God's promise is given to them. And then the water is put upon the head of the person being baptized, often in the sign of a cross. And they're given a baptism. They're given this great gift of God. Number 6, what does baptism do? Baptism now saves us. It gives life and salvation, forgiveness of sins. It marks us as Christ. So in Revelation, it talks about us being sealed into Christ, and so the devil can't take us. Now Christ keeps us from possession and from the power of the devil. So what does baptism do? It forgives sins. It makes us God's children. It gives faith. For where there is forgiveness of sins, there is life and salvation, as Luther says. So on your line, you might write, what does baptism do? It forgives sin, makes us God's children, and gives faith. Number 7, how many times do you need to be baptized? And once the baptism. Now, if a person doesn't know if they're baptized, we will baptize them to assure them that they have been baptized, but once. When God does it, he does it right. God doesn't do it halfway. God does it perfectly the first time. He does it in a way which is complete. And so when he does it, it is finished, to quote Jesus from the cross. So how many times do we have to be baptized? Once. How should we think about baptism now? See, we were baptized. We've been given faith. The Holy Spirit is dwelling in us. So now do we just forget it? No, now we remember it because a promise was given to us. You are now God's child. Jesus promised, for lo, I am with you always to the end of the ages. So we think about this as a promise by God that he is dwelling in us, that he is with us, that he is going to guide us in his ways so that what we do will have the consequences for the kingdom that he desires. So we think of baptism as a death to sin and a washing into new life, or a rising into new life. We think of it as entering the tomb. Baptism is entering the tomb with Jesus. Now Jesus is free because we come up out of the water and we're free. We drown the sin and now we have breathed into us new life. And what this does is it, first of all, means we don't have to fear and we don't have to be troubled, that we know we're always forgiven, that we know we're always saved. And secondly, it reminds us that we now have a new life to live. We don't have to be bound to sin. We have the example and the words of God that we can follow and lead to giving new life. And third, it reminds us that we're in the household of God. We're part of his family. Let's live like part of his family. And finally, that we have all the tools we need to be a Christian, to give the Holy Spirit to other people, to forgive people's sins. We have all those tools because we're baptized. If the Holy Spirit is living in us, then God himself is using us. We have all the power of God in what we do. Okay? We're going to stop there. Those are the answers to the questions on that worksheet.